What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Return to Silent Hill. When a man receives a mysterious letter from his lost love, he returns to Silent Hill, a once familiar town that is now consumed by darkness. This is the third installment to the live-action feature adaptations, where this is solely adapting the 2001 video game Silent Hill 2. I know that seems a little bit confusing, but kind of like the Dan Brown books, they just kind of picked and choose which of the books they wanted to adapt, and no matter when they got released, it's kind of all over the place, and it works. So we got Christoph Gans, who has brought us the 2006 original film, returning as co-writer and director for this standalone sequel. I absolutely adored that first movie. I mean, it's to the point where many critics and fans of the IP have hailed this as one of the best video game movies ever made. With that being said, I have not played the video games myself, but I have very fond memories of my best friend Nohea Brown burning through hours of gameplay with the first three games. The fact that I'm not a gamer and I only have the first two movies to fall back on, I've been famished for another Silent Hill movie. So although the trailer for Return looks pretty bad, it has not matched my severe disappointment with what Revelation was. And you know what? I've seen the Rotten Tomatoes score. It looks pretty bad, 9%. And then we've got like other critics who have played the video game that have just torched their reviews for this. I guess not remembering much of the game really did soften the blow for me, because if I'm going to be honest, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't as terrible as everyone was making it out to be, but hear me out. After I saw the movie, I did have to look up what they kept and what they changed as far as translating the game to the movie, and ooh, I have some mixed feelings about it. Starting out with the positives, now I know that you always have to have those stylistic and really edgy animation when it comes to the end credits, but when we open the film, I think about maybe the second scene in the beginning. I mean, we start off with James pretty much hammered drunk, and when he finally gets his letter, he is just barreling down the highway while the rain is dumping on him, and waking up the next morning hung over as shit. And as he descends down a path that really leads into the town of Silent Hill, the camera pans up and we have the opening title that rises above the ridge, Return to Silent Hill. And I gotta say, when it comes to the production design, predominantly of the Silent Hill town, it is a visual and practical feast. In the three stages that we get to immerse ourselves on fully realized sets, there is an attention to detail, especially when it came to populating the streets of the past. Or when it came to the present, there's this barren and rotting look where like a blanket of ashes are just covering some of the vehicles and the buildings. And then when it came to the nightmare world, it was just breathtaking to see a lot of just the town's skin just peel away and watching the darkness flourish to the surface like an infection. The CGI pales in comparison to the first movie. I mean, it does come off a little bit wonky. The rendering is just kind of bad and a little bit difficult for your eyes to adjust to. I wasn't sure if that was like a lighting issue or a budget restraint, but where I do have to give it credit is that the creature designs were a much big improvement in comparison to Revelation, especially when it came to the mannequin monster. Now, I did have to remind myself that these weren't necessarily the same monsters that we were canonically established, especially in the first movie. So if you haven't seen the first movie, nor have you played the video game of the first one, you don't have to worry. This is a whole new beast. For example, the pyramid head that you do get here is considered Red Pyramid. You can kind of pick up on some of those little details and changes when it comes to his look, especially his motivations. And we also have the nurses, who have more of a trypophobic look instead of the usual warped faces. And I really appreciated that they hired dancers to play some of the monsters here, including the lying figures and the nurses, because they were able to achieve this like non-human movements, especially in their physical performances. To pair all these wonderful elements together, we have cinematographer Pablo Rosso, who is the Argentinian visionary who has brought us 2017's Veronica and all four entries in the found footage horror franchise REC. And other than some of the contrived editing choices that are made throughout the movie, it is no doubt that when it comes to Gans and Rosso, they worked really well together, especially when it came to framing the horror and the action all together. There are some great shots and panning work that made the atmosphere feel more cinematic, made the monsters feel more larger than life and threatening, and even stepping back into the world of Silent Hill and what makes it so disturbing, beautiful, and thought-provoking to look at is some of the derived shots that they were able to achieve from the video game. I find it funny that they hired Evie Templeton twice, the actress who played Laura in both the Silent Hill 2 remake of the video game and now in Return to Silent Hill. So that was kind of awesome. 2 for 2 because they were able to get the original composer, Akira Yamaoka, to write and remix the score for the film. And it really drew a really big smile on my face because I could hear some of the original tracks just in the backdrop, whether they're walking out of a bar or listening to the radio or even just accompanying a flashback. I mean, that is just Silent Hill goodness. The last of my positives would have to go to Jeremy Irvine, who delivers an interesting performance as James Sunderland, our main character. And you know, the dialogue was pretty clunky, but he gave it his best with what he had to work with. And on the plus side, he does look like a cross between Taylor Kitsch and Jared Padalecki, who is dressed as Jim Morrison. Getting into my negatives, now judging it as a film first, the script was fucking atrocious. I mean, not remembering much of the game, taking the knowledge of Silent Hill 1 out of my brain, I had a hard time connecting all the dots, trying to grasp at all the straws as to the situation that's going on with James and Mary and what's going on in Silent Hill. They really much blended like oil and water to where you could have taken James and Mary's situation and completely put it in another setting. Because what's happening in Silent Hill didn't make any goddamn sense with why are protagonists so integral to this town. And then we have The Order, which is like the town's cult, which not only plagues the pacing of the film, because for some reason we've always had to just flash back and see what happened there, but it really kind of diminishes the relationship that James and Mary has established. And it really adds insult to injury, especially when it comes down to what they meant to each other. There are minute but very annoying side characters that appear and disappear, and they don't really add much to the story. I feel like there's some sort of importance there, but I mean, again, they show up and they're gone for the rest of the movie. They don't even die half the time. And then even when it came to some of the monsters like Red Pyramid Head, who I thought was going to have much more of an integral presence here, but just shows up for like 2 or 3 scenes and completely fucks off. And then they go for the cheap reveals and plot twists that is so on the nose, and it is just spoon-fed to you, where it is rather insulting to the audience's intelligence and deprives them from cohesive storytelling. Now, I gotta say, it is a rarity when Leanne tells me that she is disappointed in a movie that we watched together in theaters, but I shit you not, there was a hardcore Silent Hill 2 fan 2 seats away from us losing her fucking mind. And that was probably the most entertaining part of my experience, to where I probably tolerated this condensed version a lot more than it deserved. There were several key moments, one involving a gravestone where this particular fan threw her hands up in the air, began to just pull at her hair and screaming under her breath, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And a few oh my goshes and all that kind of stuff. And then by the time the credits rolled, she stood up really fast up on her seat and she pretty much screamed out, "That movie was fucking ass." And I was just so curious to look up what drastic changes were made in order to incite that type of reaction. Oh, diddy. Now, this is my negatives in the perspective of an adaptation with the cliff notes that I got. So I had no idea how rich, powerful, and thematically compelling the video game was in comparison to the version of the movie that we got. I mean, they completely strip away a lot of the individualism, a lot of the identities of the supporting characters and the monsters, and the integral role that each of them play and what they represent. And to be even more insult to injury, I had no idea that Red Pyramid was supposed to be this stalking and looming presence throughout the story, and that was a really big letdown because he's my favorite. The fact that James and Mary aren't married and they're just a couple, an extended flame to each other, really downplays the sentimental value of their relationship, as well as the tragedy feeling less impactful, especially when we get to that third act. But when it comes down to the ending as well, you know, at face value, it appears very bittersweet, but when you look into all the various endings and how you kind of get there in the video game, the fate that they've chosen for James is rather shitty. It's rather depressing. I mean, there's not really much of a resolve here, and I'm wondering, is there gonna be a follow-up to the movie version of this? I mean, because what appears to be a really positive like ending is not so happy at all. Overall, I kept thinking to myself, what if we gave Guillermo del Toro a Silent Hill movie to do? I think he would have done wonders with it. And you know what? At the end of the day, when you're bringing a story like this to life, I think it would have worked a lot better for it to be a television series, because we would have had the opportunity to just flesh out all these elements that make the story great, all the characters that make this movie wonderful. And by doing so, I think there's an audience for it, and if not, leave this IP the fuck alone. Not only is it devastating to the fans, but it's also devastating for the people who don't play video games that this is their only half-assed version of what Silent Hill 2, the video game, was and will be the only source material that moviegoers and theatrical experiences will translate this particular story. And before I looked everything up, I do have to admit, I was neither upset nor frustrated with my viewing experience, so I would have to go as far as to say that it's not the end of the world if I were to choose to watch this again. And at the end of the day, this is a beautiful but poorly conceived adaptation to a beloved video game. Well, alright guys, that's all I got to say about that movie. Go ahead and check it out if you want to. Look forward to more reviews. I am Jaren, but now I'm going to want to thank you guys again for taking some time out of your day to hear me talk some movies. I'll see you guys at the theater. In the meanwhile, take care.